Hey everyone, and you're on the Neoncast. I'm your titular host, Neon Taster, coming to you on this Valentine's Day of 2016, bringing you episode 5 of this Neoncast. Been an interesting week with some news and some trailers and some info and all kinds of happy horse shit like that. In fact, as I say this, I'm writing down a couple more things that I now remembered, just so I can kind of touch on them. So last Sunday was the Super Bowl. I mentioned last episode that I would probably discuss any and all things that would happen during the Super Bowl, any kind of TV spots and trailers, and that happened in spades. And then we also got, after that, the final Batman v Superman trailer, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And then also this week's topic, whatever, is going to be my review of the phantasmagorical film Deadpool, which I saw last night. So I guess we could get right on it. So yeah, the Super Bowl was on Sunday. It was kind of boring. The game wasn't terrific. I know this isn't one of those sports ball podcasts, but whatever. It was a game. It wasn't super exciting, and the Super Bowl commercials were also kind of unmemorable. I mean, I kind of enjoy it. I enjoy the whole Super Bowl commercial thing in a like a social media way. Like, I enjoy watching Twitter and tweeting about stuff as it happens and watching everyone's reactions and stuff. And there wasn't too much that made people talk. A couple of things here and there that maybe made people chuckle or they thought was lame, but nothing that caused the kind of reactions that I've seen in previous years. But we did have our fair share of, movie, comic booky stuff. And I guess we could just go down the line and kind of talk a little about each one of them. So the first was, and I'm just going to apologize because I'm going to mention 10 Cloverfield Lane again. Seriously, this movie's coming out like in a month. I'll see it, and then I swear I'm never going to talk about it again. But like, as I said, it's turned into a bit of a like tradition almost, where like, I don't know, I mentioned it the first episode, and then every week there's some news about it. But so there was another TV spot for it that did seem to confirm that it's Cloverfield related, sort of. I mean, they're still keeping it vague, but we did see some exterior shots. We did hear some kind of monsterish roar. So that's that. And also, I actually saw the first trailer, the one that was already out with the rework of the Tiffany song, I Think We're Alone Now, which I thought was kind of a funny song to use. I saw that in the theater before Deadpool, and at the end, it had one of those like Tyler Durden spliced in like frames, like at the very end, like, and like a little image, like full flash of something else. I couldn't see what it was, but then when I got home and I like popped it up on YouTube, the YouTube version doesn't have that. So I don't know what it was. It looked kind of like a Fallout 4 or just Fallout universe, like infographic kind of thing. Like I don't know, like I haven't played any of the Fallout games, but I know that character and that sort of that graphical look of all the stuff of it. It kind of reminded me of that, but it was so brief, it was impossible for me to like glean any info from it. But yeah, whatever. Like I said, it's coming out next month. It's going to get completely overshadowed by Batman v Superman, which comes out, I think, a week after it. So that was that. Another thing that we got was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Game of Shadows. No, that's the Sherlock Holmes, I think. Everything has to have a dumb subtitle. They can't just call it Ninja Turtles 2. Like, why not? I think somewhere in the 90s, they kind of decided that sequel numbers made people less excited. Like, oh, it's the fourth, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's the sixth Friday the 13th. That sounds lame. It sounds like we're just squeezing out sequels. Let's give them weird subtitles instead, and they're all the fucking same. It's always like Revengeance and Resurgence and Awakening and Resurrection and whatever. It's always these dumb, because like Independence Day is called Independence Day Resurgence, the new one, and Transformers Dark of the Moon and Age of Extinction. It's just like, just call it 4. Who cares? It's not, at least, I mean, Fast and the Furious kind of play a little bit around with it. And they have like, Fast 5 and Fast 7 or whatever. But at least like, where it falls in the chronology, it's not like some like, where does this go? Where does and obviously like Star Wars are very good with that stuff. It's funny, Star Wars is like the only franchise that almost takes pride in announcing what number in the series this is. It's like episode 8, whereas other franchises are like, this is the 8th one we're making. We better hide the fact that it's the 8th one. But Ninja Turtles looks really fun. Got our little confirmation that Krang is going to be in it, and the Technodrome, and I don't know, maybe like Dimension X and stuff like that, which I had mentioned in the past, I think is very good. I think that kind of going back to that cartoon vibe and the characters from the cartoon, the material from the cartoon is going to keep people interested, because there's so much cool stuff that you would like to see on the big screen. It's another thing I never got about adaptations of cartoon series or video games or stuff, where like there's so much interesting shit that they came up with that is one of the main reasons that these things became popular. And then they don't really bring all that stuff over, which is kind of odd. And but you know what? Maybe they were smart about it. Maybe they said like, let's not blow our load in the first movie. Let's just introduce these characters and blah blah blah, and then in the second one we can bring everyone on. Kind of like what they're doing with Godzilla, because the first Godzilla was like, oh look, it's Godzilla, and he's fighting some monster you've never heard of called a Motu, or Muto, massive extraterrestrial organism. I can't remember the whatever. And people were like, where's Mothra? Where's Ghidorah? Where's Mechagodzilla? Where's whatever? So, like, apparently now in the second one, that's what's going to happen. Like, they're going to bring a bunch of, like, monsters that from the Godzilla universe. And that's cool. That's, like, a good selling point for a sequel. Whereas if, like, you shove everything in the first one, then what's your crutch? Like, what's the thing that you're going to sell a sequel on? I guess that could be smart if done right. Like I said before, the first Ninja Turtles was all right. It was certainly not as bad as I thought it was going to be, because Michael Bay. It's weird because Michael Bay's name is almost tainted now, mostly because of Transformers. I mean, I kind of like some of the other stuff that Michael Bay's done, like The Rock. I mean, The Rock is a great movie. It's a great 90s-y action movie. It's not a great film, It's not like a triumph of cinema, but it's still badass. Like, I really enjoy that movie still. But yeah, he has this really bad reputation now because of Star Wars. Star Wars, because of Transformers, and he does do some stuff that's kind of lowbrow and kind of groan-inducing. Especially if you've watched Age of Extinction, has some truly like lowbrow, like very, very weird, almost creepy stuff in it, where you're just like, what? Like, I feel really uncomfortable even watching this. So, but the first Ninja Turtles was fun-ish. I said my biggest problem with it was the problem with Destiny. Everything's Destiny now. Everything has to be like, oh, I used to know you. You were my turtles. But overall it was all right, especially the turtles. And so now, like, if you take that fun turtle dynamic and you bring in more stuff that Bebop and Rocksteady, Krang, and do it right, it can be like very fun, I think. So yeah, that was so 10 Cloverfield Lane, Ninja Turtles. Okay, so then we had so Batman versus Superman had a couple of like weird fake Turkish Airlines commercials, which some people liked, some people didn't like. There was like a fake like fly to Gotham on Turkish Airlines, and here's Bruce Wayne to tell you a little about our airline, and fly to Metropolis, and here's Lex Luthor, and he's gonna whatever. And they were all right, I guess. As far as like commercial tie-ins go, those were fine. Before Star Wars came out, had some truly, truly awful commercial tie-ins, because unlike Batman v Superman, that's like a space opera that takes place in another galaxy. So it's like, Toyota, it's like, shut up. And I think the worst one I thought was the Hunger Games, when the last Hunger Games came out, and they had some kind of car commercial. I think it was like Ram. And their slug line was like, Ram salutes the heroes of the Hunger Games. And I was just like, I'm never buying one of your cars ever. Just on the strength of this one despicable, awful commercial tie-in. I'm never, ever buying a Ram. But this one was all right. It was kind of fun, I guess. But then after that was an actual trailer. But like I said, I'm gonna talk about that a little later, because we have more Super Bowl-y things to discuss. So like the next one was X-Men Apocalypse, which looks interesting, I guess. Could be fun. I liked Days of Future Past. I liked First Class. I liked Days of Future Past a lot the first time I watched it, and then I've seen it a couple of times since, and my love of it has faded slightly. I think one of the main problems I have with it is the problem of meta consideration. Meaning, I think Jennifer Lawrence and the character of Mystique play a way too big a part in this entire franchise, simply because Jennifer Lawrence became a gigantic star, and they were like, well, now we have this giant star on our hands, and she's contracted to do a few more of these, so like we better like beef up her role and make her like a central element of them. And I don't think I like that too much. I think there's other X-Men characters that I would have liked to see take center stage more, and it kind of looks like Apocalypse is bringing those in now, like Jean Grey and Cyclops, a little more of like the classic X-Men sort of milieu that we knew, because like in the cartoon, which is the thing that I that I grew up watching, you had like, so your X-Men were like Professor X, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Beast, Storm, and then you had like Rogue, and you had like Jubilee, and you had Gambit. I think those were like, that was like the main group of X-Men. And most of those characters are either not at all in these movies, or in them to a fairly small degree. And there's a lot of focus on Magneto, which is he's a big element, obviously, of the X-Men cartoon. And there's a big focus on Mystique. And then the rest are like sort of afterthought-y things. So it's, I mean, look, they're fine. They're not bad. And Apocalypse looks like it'll be like a culmination of this whole trilogy and be like really large scale. And I love the fact that Oscar Isaac is in it, because I'm now a huge fan of his, not just because of Star Wars. I've loved him since I saw Ex Machina. He was even in a couple of movies before that. I think Inside Llewellyn Davis and stuff like that I didn't watch. But in Ex Machina, he's so awesome. And then again in Star Wars, he's just, he just steals every scene that he's in. I think he has a really big future. Like, I think he's just gonna be that actor that everybody wants in their project. So, yeah, and again, it has Storm, and it has Archangel and Psylocke and again, and Jean Grey and Jubilee and Cyclops, and they're gonna just shove everything in there and see what sticks. And the trailer looks all right, I guess. I don't know. I'm not really sure what it's gonna be about yet. Like, I don't know these comic storylines. Like, I didn't even know the Days of Future Past storyline. So I wouldn't say excited, but I'll watch it certainly. Sorry, hold on a second. I'm gonna take one of my famous drinks that you're gonna have to take a 3-second break to let me sip. So 1 second. All right, so the last one that we got was Civil War TV spot, which I thought was really cool and really interesting. And that's the one I'm more excited for than anything else, I think, because I'm such a huge Winter Soldier fan. I think that's probably, I mean, on the whole, I think that my two personal favorite Marvel movies to this point are Guardians of the Galaxy and Winter Soldier. Just the two I clicked with the most. Obviously, Avengers is great. The first Iron Man is great. But the rest are okay, to varying degrees. But those two are just movies that I could just watch again and again and again and never get sick of. I think I can add Deadpool to that now, but we'll get to that later. And it's also a Fox Marvel. It's not a classic Marvel movie. But the Civil War trailer looked really cool. And I think I've said this before here. If not, I'll say it now. One of the things that I really got interested in about Civil War was that I'd gotten what I like to call explosion fatigue, meaning that I've seen everything explode by this point. The whole world has exploded. Buildings, we've had gigantic monsters and giant aliens and epic space battles and like at this point we've seen it all. So it's no longer like a selling point to see in a trailer giant things happening and be like, oh, I gotta go watch that. To me, the first trailer for Civil War made me want to go see it because of the character drama. Because at this point, you know Iron Man well, and you know Captain America well, and you know the history between Cap and Bucky, and you know how all of this stuff is going to now clash, and like these ideologies are going to intersect, and the character drama, and who's gonna fight who's gonna survive, is anybody gonna die? I know I'm not gonna spoil it here, but in the post-Civil War comic storyline, some characters die, some characters change. The things are not the way they were before, and I think that's a big selling point for me. And this TV spot was pretty interesting, and it kind of had a cool chant in the background, and it showed the two teams finally. And I know this info has been out there before, but like it just shows them standing like facing off in the two teams. And so like you got on the I don't know how I'm gonna, so like there's the Sokovia Accords. Okay, because like in Age of Ultron, there's this thing in Sokovia where the city almost gets destroyed and whatever. And I guess in this world, because in the comic world it's a little different, but in this world the UN establishes the Sokovia Accords, which I think requires superhero registration. So like if you want to be a superhero, you got to register with the government or whatever. So you got your pro-Sokovia and you got your anti-Sokovia teams. So your pro-Sokovia teams obviously like Iron Man, and then Vision and Black Panther, which we see now officially like standing with the teams, and War Machine and Black Widow. And on the anti-Sokovia side, you got Captain America, obviously Falcon, Hawkeye, you got Scarlet Witch, you got your Ant-Man, and you got your Bucky, your Winter Soldier. I was very surprised to see Black Widow and Hawkeye on opposing sides of this conflict, because we know that they have this history. We see this in the Avengers, and we see this in was it Thor, I think, where Loki takes him over or whatever. Yeah, anyway, like I always assumed that those two were going to figure out a way to be on the same side. I'm kind of interested in seeing Ant-Man, like in this whole, because if you've watched Ant-Man, there's a scene where he fights Falcon, which was kind of a cool scene. And so now he's kind of being brought into this world. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's about all I have to say about that. I mean, there's not too much for me to get into it because I'm not a big expert on this. I just know that I'm very excited about this movie specifically, and the conflict that's in it, and the drama, and just seeing seeing how this split in the Avengers plays itself out. And obviously we know that Thor and Hulk are missing. They're going to be in Thor Ragnarok. And how this all leads up into Infinity War is beyond me. I don't know. But I'm also excited about Infinity War because it's being made by the Russo brothers, who are making Civil War. They made Captain America after Age of Ultron. Joss Whedon and Marvel split. He went his own way. And they gave the Russo brothers the helm of Civil War, and they gave them $1 billion to make, Infinity War. They gave them $1 billion to make Infinity War, like both of them. A fifth of which, by the way, is Robert Downey Jr.'s salary. Like, he's going to make $200 million. And they're shooting the whole thing on IMAX. There's now IMAX has become so popular now, that they actually went out and they built better cameras, because one of the main problems with IMAX is that it has big, heavy, noisy cameras that hold very small amounts of film stock, which makes them very hard to work with. But, Nolan went out and filmed a bunch of stuff with it, and some others, and IMAX sells a lot of tickets. It's more expensive. IMAX tickets are more expensive, and there's a big windfall from IMAX profits. So they now went out and they built new IMAX cameras that are better to work with. And I believe Infinity War is going to be filmed on those newer IMAX cameras, entirely on IMAX, which I think is really cool. I love the IMAX format. I think it's epic. The second time I went to see Star Wars, I went to see it in true 70mm IMAX. And the scene on Jakku where the market gets attacked by the TIE fighters and Finn and Rey have to run away is all shot in 70mm. And if you see it in like regular format, when they're running and there's this giant explosion behind them, it gets cut off because of the aspect ratio. If you see that in IMAX, it's a massively tall explosion and you see the whole thing. It's just glorious, and it's just a really great format for stuff like that. Not even just like big monsters and stuff like that, just even a nice, really big, wide outside shot that has a big explosion in it. Like Mad Max would probably look just epic in IMAX. Yeah, that should be interesting. So that's basically what happened during the Super Bowl. And as I said, after that, we got sometime this week, I can't remember what day it was, the final Batman versus Superman trailer. Now, people had a big problem with the previous trailer. It showed too much. It was kind of scatterbrained. People didn't want to know that Apocalypse was in it, if that's really Apocalypse. Spoiler alert, it is Apocalypse. I mean, I guess. It was... There's a lot going on. And there's a lot we haven't seen yet. We haven't seen Aquaman, which we know is in it. We haven't seen The Flash, which we know is in it. We haven't seen Cyborg, which we know is in it. We haven't seen a couple other things that are big spoilers that I happen to know about that I'm not going to reveal, but we haven't seen yet. So, like, it spoiled a lot, and yet there is still all this other shit that we haven't seen. It's going to be a jam-packed movie. And yet it was unsatisfying to people. But then came this trailer 4, and kind of brought it back around for people. I know it brought it back around for me because, say what you want about Zack Snyder, the guy knows how to film action. He knows how to make stuff look cool. If you watched 300, if you watch Watchmen, even if you watch Sucker Punch, which is an abject disaster, the action sequences in it, because it's basically a movie that's constructed around 3 or 4 big like action set pieces, those parts are really, really cool and really slick, and they have a lot of like anime influence, and just all of the really awesome, like, you know, it's a girl in a sailor school uniform with a samurai sword, and she's fighting a giant robot dragon in the future, in a weird World War I future with zombie armies and fucking spaceships, but also like B-1 or B-52 bombers, and it's this just complete insanity in the best possible way, and he just knows how to make it look cool. He knows how to shoot action incredibly well, and he does that time shifty stuff when it kind of slows down, it speeds up, it spins around. He's really, really good at that stuff. Like, I think that Zack Snyder shines the more he has like story constraints to work with. That's why I think Watchmen works so well, because he got a very locked down story, and he just had to make it look good, and that's what he did. So in this trailer, we finally see Batman kicking some ass, and it's just epic. It's just great. You know, he's just smashing people around, and it's shot well. I mean, I think this movie potentially could have the best Batman fighting stuff in any Batman movie. I don't think the Dark Knight trilogy, the Nolan one, was particularly awesome in the way it showed Batman fighting, like hand-to-handy combat. It had a lot of really good like tense like action scenes and car chases and stuff, but Nolan really knows how to shoot like combat, and if you watch this trailer, you will see exactly what I mean. And it shows a little more of Batman and Superman. It shows a little more Wonder Woman, shows a little bit of her like jumping around and supposedly fighting Apocalypse. It shows a little more of that weird dream sequence that involves Darkseid and the future. It's a little bit unclear because nobody knows how that kind of fits into the movie, whether or not it's a dream sequence. And if it's a dream sequence, then why is Darkseid and his whatever they're called, yeah, I can't remember, those flying soldiery things of his. If it's just a dream sequence, then why are they in there? Because that's like a canonical villain or whatever. It's unclear. It's unclear, but I'm hoping that this will be like a crazy ass train wrecky disaster, but like in a good way. Because as I said, the world of DC, even more so than the world of Marvel, is just bananas. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You got Superman running around and Wonder Woman. You got these like godlike beings, and they're tearing down cities. There's really very little way to make this realistic or whatever. So I just hope that they embrace the craziness in a way that's just fun, and you can just sit there and go like, oh, awesome. That's kind of like what Suicide Squad looks like. It looks like it doesn't give a fuck. It's just having fun, and it's going to have a lot of action and a lot of like superpowery, cool stuff and banter, and in a kind of a comic booky way that's fun. Yeah, and I really hope that it pulls it off, and it doesn't just feel like, I don't know, Fantastic Four, which I watched this week too, and is just so bad. It's so bad. Which leads me into my next thing, because as I said, I saw Deadpool, me and everybody else in America, because apparently it's on track to breaking every record ever, which is, I couldn't be happier about. So let's before I actually review Deadpool, let's take a step back for a second. So the way I understand this, and correct me if I'm wrong, when Marvel was going out of business, like in the 90s, I think, it sold off a bunch of its properties to like Fox and to Sony. And then after that, it kind of emerged from its crisis. It started its own film studio. It started its own Marvel Cinematic Universe. But then those properties are being closely held by Sony, Spider-Man, and Fox have like Fantastic Four and X-Men and stuff. And Fox do not have a really good history of this stuff. And they already tried to do Deadpool in the completely bad movie X-Men Origins Wolverine, which had Deadpool in it, and it was not Deadpool. It was Ryan Reynolds, but it wasn't Deadpool. It was this crazy, not cool, no mouth, blades that are fused to his hands. That movie's just garbage, okay? And I guess Ryan Reynolds has been trying to get Deadpool made properly for a long time, and Fox did not want that. And they eventually leaked some test footage that generated a lot of buzz, so eventually Fox relented and let them make Deadpool. For a budget of, by the way, $50 million, which is not a lot of money, considering the fact that the second Divergent movie, the Divergent Insurgent, cost $110 million to make. And I don't know if you've seen that, but that movie looks cheap as fuck. And it cost more than twice as much as Deadpool. And Fox were predicting it to have a $60 million opening weekend. It's now on track to do $133 million, 3-day, and because it's President's Day, it's actually a 4-day weekend. It's projected to make $151 million, making it the second biggest Marvel property opening after the Avengers. So like it's going to do better than any other Marvel movie other than the Avengers. Better than Captain America, and better than Guardians, and better than Age of Ultron, and better than Iron Man sequels or whatever. It went bananas, and it's R-rated, which is just unheard of. It's breaking all kinds of R-rated records and stuff like that. It's just gangbusters. Everybody went to watch it, and everybody loved it. Aside from your random fuddy-duddy, has to be the guy that doesn't like it guy. Those people. And it's great. I mean, it's just great. I'm not going to really spoil too much. This is going to be largely spoiler free. It's not really about the plot. I'll put it that way. The plot itself, it's largely just the origin story of Deadpool. There's not really a lot of it in it that's shocking. There's not really revelations and twists and stuff. I have a feeling that's going to happen. There's going to be more of that like in the sequel. This is just kind of setting the stage of it, so there isn't too much to like ruin about it. But it's just, really, from like the first moment, the audience was laughing out loud. And several times in it, I said to myself that I could not believe, how like raunchy and edgy it was. Very adult oriented, certainly. Very meta. It had a lot of, if I can ruin one joke in it, and that's fine because there's about 80 bazillion jokes in it. When Colossus is like, he's Russian in this and speaks with like an obnoxious like Russian accent, and he's like, "Come, Deadpool, we will take you to Professor X," or whatever. And Deadpool goes like, "Which one, McAvoy or Stewart?" And I just guffawed at that because it's so self-aware and it's so fourth wall breaky at all times, which I like. I kind of like that kind of humor, and it really is just a weird self-aware meta adult kind of romp. And it has some good action, certainly. It's very violent in parts, but that's not really the point of it. I think the main point of it is the jokes and stuff. Although, like I said, I think that if the sequel has a bigger budget, which it probably should, because like I said, they went so far on a relatively small budget. Like if you see this movie, you know, it's not the best CGI stuff ever. You know, it's not. I've certainly seen better CGI in other movies and stuff. It's good enough. Certainly, none of it looks awful, and it has a lot of relatively large-ish scale stuff happening in it. It doesn't feel cheap. It certainly doesn't feel cheap. It just feels like a really cool, fun, funny origin story that's also constructed in an interesting way. It's not just like, well, you know, the first half or 3/4 of the movie is just the story of how Wade Wilson became Deadpool, and then later it's like Deadpool goes off and fights some bad guys. No, it's actually very clever in that sense that it doesn't do that. It's a little all over the place, but I don't want to get into that. You'll see when you go see it. If you haven't already, because like I said, everybody in America has probably seen it at this point. But I do think that the biggest success that this movie does is it shows that when you do things right, everybody wins. Everybody wins, because this movie goes against almost every paradigm that has developed in this, like, the market of making superhero movies. It's very not mass appeal-y. It has a lot of sort of inside-y references that are easy to miss. It's, as I keep saying, very adult, and has, you know, it's like fuck, shit, fuck, motherfucker, fuck. It's like a Tarantino movie. You know, it's like everybody's cursing in it at all times. There's a lot of very sort of overt sexual stuff in it. There's it's dirty, and it's mean. There's a lot of people are very mean to each other. And so it goes against the grain of like this sort of slick, process that goes into making these big budget movies that make a lot of money. And yet, look how well it does, and look how well it was received. They basically let them do whatever they wanted. And the promotional campaign for this movie needs to be like studied in like marketing school, because they just went all out. They did crazy, funny things. They put out like weird troll ads. They did, you know, weird like international marketing campaigns, and just went bananas. And basically, it just worked perfectly. And as I said, when you do that, everyone wins. So you get a movie that the audiences just adore. The studio didn't even spend that much money on it, and now they're making bank. Just yet another, you know, like example of how when you just listen to the sounds of the ether, when you put your nose to your ear to the grindstone or whatever. I'm getting all my metaphors mixed up here, but like when you understand the franchise that you own, when you really understand it, then you're able to exploit it. That's the actual term, is to exploit your property. You can squeeze it for everything that it's worth. Not in a cynical, annoying way, not in a Transformers way, which is that there's nothing good about the Transformers. Nobody likes them, and yet they make gazillions of dollars. Not in that way. In the way, in a loving way, in a way where like people, like I want to own this movie today. I want to go out and buy it on Blu-ray right now and watch it several more times, and just laugh and catch all the little jokes and the little throwaway things. There's a lot going on in it. There were a lot of things where I was like, ooh, was that poster supposed to be a joke, or was that whatever? A lot of that going on. And a lot of pop culture references and stuff like that. So like it's not that I wanted to go see it because it had big cartoony robots trashing cities in it. It's because I know Deadpool a little bit. I'm not even like a big Deadpool comic fan. I just know Deadpool from like, you know, from the world, from being on the internet and living in the world. And I knew what Deadpool was about, and I knew that this was going to be like a Deadpool movie, and it was that. It just was that. And just a joy, a complete joy. And I just really hope that the right lessons are learned from this. My friend Piggy Bank, whom I reference a lot here, said that he guarantees that the first production meeting for the sequel will go something like this, like the studio heads are going to say to Ryan Reynolds something like, great job with that Deadpool, you really made it work, man, and here's your budget for the next one, but hey, let's try and maybe talk about how we can make this PG-13. Like that was his sort of prediction about how that went. And I don't doubt that, because as I said, Fox have a really bad reputation for how they deal with this stuff. But that would be a huge mistake. That would be a huge mistake. You see, the point is, the right lesson to learn from this is, we did this right, let's do this right again. Not, let's see what we can tweak here to make it more successful. You have your winning formula right here. Your winning formula is, you take a Deadpool movie and you make it like Deadpool. And that involves it being for adults only. And by the way, a lot of kids went to see it. I saw everywhere online, people took their kids in it, people internationally. I read, I'm also on Hebrew Twitter, Israel Twitter, and a lot of people were like, well, I went to see it in a theater, and it was, full of kids with their parents and stuff. That's fine. It's not that, I went to see Terminator 2 with my father when I was, I think, 9 in the theater. And I remember my grandmother took me to see True Lies when it was out, and the ticket lady was like, "Are you sure you want to take 2 young children to see it?" And my grandma was like, "Yeah, shut up. Just give me the tickets." And we enjoyed it. And because, I'm sure there's a bunch of kids who are truly isolated from stuff like curse words and stuff. It doesn't have, I'm trying to think of whether or not it has like truly disgusting violence in it. It has some decapitations and some like limb severings and stuff, but none of it is like front and center, like I'm going to saw your head off, ISIS style. I think Terminator 2, which like I just said, I saw when I was 9, had more disturbing, like front and center violent stuff in it. This movie is more about like language. It's more R-rated in terms of the language. And yeah, it has some tits in it. There's a strip club scene in it. They got to go to a strip club for some reason, and yeah, there's like bare-breasted women walking around. But for the most part, it's. I mean, that's where the R rating sits. It's way more about the sex and the language than it is about like horrific violence. And if you're a parent who doesn't mind that your kid is exposed to stuff like fuck or whatever, you can probably take them to see Deadpool. But yeah, as I said, there's already talk of the sequel. I don't want to get into it. There's a post-credit scene that if you go to the movie, you should stay in, and kind of discusses vaguely the sequel and what might be in it. And I just hope that the right lessons are learned from this. And I hope that this bodes well for the future of R-rated movies. I always like when an R-rated movie does well, even though I know that PG-13 now is the limits of PG-13 have been kind of pushed. The envelope is being pushed. The Dark Knight is rated PG-13. It doesn't feel like it's a kid's movie. It feels like it's an adult movie. And that's a movie that doesn't need to have fucks and shits and cunts thrown in it. It works perfectly without that kind of language. And the very graphic violence is sort of cleverly masked, so it doesn't have to be rated R. But, a movie like this, a movie like Spawn, maybe someone I know said maybe they can finally remake Spawn properly. That's a movie that really needs to be rated R. It's very dirty in the language. It has a lot of sort of graphic violence in it too. But yeah, just in general, the future of just R-rated movies that are like good movies based on properties that will work well if they're rated R. because, as I said a few weeks ago, comic book movies and sort of geek movies, science fiction and stuff like that has a big adult fan base, not just general audience fan base. So as long as you actually do that well, you're going to put asses in seats. And this is your proof. I mean, this movie tripled its investment in its opening weekend. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that like the Blair Witch Project does, because it has or Paranormal Activity, because they have like a micro budget. This movie cost $50 million to make, and it's already made that back thrice, 3 times over. That's awesome. So yeah, I think on that note, I'm going to wrap up, and just once again say thank you for listening and subscribing and sharing and commenting. I am at Neon Taster on Twitter. The podcast's Twitter account is at Neoncast for all your comments and questions and stuff like that, podcast related. Much easier to tweet at Neoncast. I'm always checking that out, so like I can always answer, and also I'll like mine that stuff for like before I sit down and do one of these. And also neoncastpod@gmail.com. Email address if you have some kind of more long form thing to write me or whatever. Yeah, I guess I forgot to mention that Ready Player One, which was scheduled for December of 2007, is now pushed to March 2017, sorry. It's pushed to March 2018. The fact that Star Wars is now in December is scaring everybody off. But that's basically all I had to say about that. There's not much news about that project as of yet. So yeah, at Neon Taster, at Neoncast, neoncastpod@gmail.com. You've been listening to the Neoncast, if you have been listening. And if not, then why am I talking to you?